Now listen here, sugar. After living long enough to see fashions return twice and scents return rarely, I have learned one thing for certain: every person you love is holding a story you have not heard yet. And when they leave this world, those stories do not die. Oh no, baby, they find you. Some come in gentle memories. Some come in quiet whispers. And some, well, some come locked in a steel safe that has been sitting in your own home for nearly 4 decades. And when you finally open it, Lord help us, the truth walks out and sits itself right down like it has been waiting for you all this time. Patterns are quiet storytellers that speak in ways we do not always understand, yet they stay steady and true like the ticking of an old clock on a kitchen wall. When I look back now, I can see how those Tuesdays were talking to me long before the truth ever showed its face. Every week for 38 long years my husband rose with the same gentle sigh and the same careful stretch. He put on the same worn jacket and reached for the same old keys as if the ritual itself gave him shape and purpose. Habit lived in his bones and I let it live in mine too. His footsteps across the floor at 8 in the morning were as familiar to me as my own heartbeat. The door would shut and the truck engine would rumble away and life would settle back into its ordinary rhythm. At the time I never thought to question any of it. Love has a way of polishing the surface of life until it shines so bright you stop looking beneath it. I believed in him with the full trust of a woman who had built her world around the steady promise of a good man. When he said Tuesday bank trip, I nodded with a warm smile and returned to my chores. I assumed he was handling savings or checking on some account or paying whatever needed paying. He had always been the kind of man who handled things quietly, so I did not pry. I saw no reason to. Life felt solid. Life felt steady. I mistook routine for honesty and repetition for transparency. Years slipped by and those Tuesdays remained untouched. Storms came and went, yet he still rose on schedule. Illness brushed past us, yet he still took that drive. Even holidays did not shift his pattern. If a celebration fell on a Tuesday, he simply left early, kissed me on the forehead and said he would be back before the guests arrived. I admired his discipline. I admired his punctuality. I admired the reliability he carried like a second skin. I should have wondered why that single routine never cracked under the pressure of real life, but I did not. Sometimes devotion makes you blind in ways you will not recognize until much later. There were Sundays when I would ask whether he needed help with any financial matters and he would smile in that soft way he always did. He would say it was all under control. His voice was calm and reassuring. I never heard anything shaky or secretive inside it. I thought a peaceful voice meant a peaceful truth. That was my mistake. He was a master at holding himself together. The world could tilt right under him, yet he always kept his back straight and his tone even. I admired this strength for years without realizing that strength can be used to build walls as easily as homes. I remember one Tuesday when the sky was gray and heavy with a storm that felt mean enough to knock down old trees. I told him to stay home. I told him the roads were slick and the wind was wild. He touched my shoulder and said he would not be long. He stood there with that same worn jacket pulled tight and those same determined eyes that never gave away what lived behind them. Then he left. Just like that. The storm beat down on the house for an hour and I waited by the window watching for his truck. When he returned soaked and tired, I scolded him gently. He just smiled and said, "A little rain never hurt anybody." I let it go. I always let it go. Another year I asked once why he never changed banks. A new one had opened closer to home and offered all sorts of modern conveniences. I rattled off every reason why switching might be easier, yet he simply shook his head with a patient look. He said the old bank knew him well and he felt comfortable there. I accepted that. I thought loyalty to a place was nothing unusual. I thought it was a sign of his old-fashioned nature. It never crossed my mind that comfort can also be a cover for something else entirely. Something quiet. Something hidden. Every pattern has a root though, and every routine has a reason, even if that reason lies buried deep beneath years of unspoken memory. His Tuesday ritual became so woven into the fabric of our marriage that it no longer felt like a choice he made. It felt like a law written into the week itself. Tuesday came and he left. Tuesday passed and he returned. I did not see the signs because I did not expect signs. That is the dangerous thing about trust. It stops you from asking questions you should probably ask. There were small things I remember now. The way he sometimes returned with a faraway look. The way he held the steering wheel a little too tightly as he pulled into the driveway. The way he occasionally sat in the truck for a moment before coming inside. Not long, just long enough to exhale something heavy before he stepped back into the life we shared. I noticed these moments, but I never understood them. I chalked them up to stress, to work, to age, to anything at all except the truth. When he walked through the door after each trip, he always gave the same greeting. "Hi hun, all taken care of." That was it. Light, simple, final. I never pressed because pressing felt unnecessary. A happy home can become a soft trap. It convinces you that asking fewer questions keeps the peace. It convinces you that silence is a kind of harmony. I did not want to be the wife who pried. I wanted to be the wife he felt safe with. So I swallowed curiosity until it no longer even rose in me. There is a quiet danger in routines. They wrap around you like warm blankets, and before you know it you cannot see beyond the softness. His pattern became something I trusted blindfolded. I assumed that consistency equals honesty because that is what we are taught to believe. People who lie usually shift their stories. People who deceive usually change their behavior. At least that is what we think. But sometimes the deepest secrets are guarded not by chaos but by order. A perfect pattern can hide a world of shadow because nothing draws suspicion like predictability. The neighborhood watched him too. They admired his discipline. They often said he was a man who kept things in perfect order. Not messy, not scattered, not unreliable. People spoke warmly of his steadiness. They believed in it so strongly that their words reinforced my own blind trust. If so many eyes saw something good, I assumed it must be true. That assumption became the blanket I wrapped around every doubt until doubt itself faded away. Looking back now, I can see the truth that sat quietly at the edge of my awareness. The truth was whispering through every steady step he took out that door. Patterns speak, but only if we listen. I was not listening. I was living in the comfort of repetition and allowing it to become proof of goodness. I did not realize that routine can be armor worn by a person who fears that one stray question might shatter everything. He carried that pattern like a shield. I let it stand because I thought it protected us both. I did not know it was protecting him from something he could not face and protecting me from a truth he was not ready to reveal. Patterns are not just habits. They are roads. And some roads lead to places we never expect. Some lead to safes filled with secrets and years of hidden letters. Some lead to revelations that shake the soul awake. If someone had told me years ago that his pattern held the key to a truth I would one day uncover, I would have laughed and shaken my head. But that is the nature of quiet repetition. It masks itself as harmless. It hides in plain sight. It gains your trust until you stop questioning why it exists at all. Patterns do not lie. They simply wait for the moment when we finally learn how to read them. Love can be the softest blanket draped over the hardest truth, and I learned that lesson far too late. There is a quiet tenderness that grows in a marriage over the years. It stretches from morning light to evening shadows until it becomes the lens through which you see everything. I loved my husband in a way that made the world gentler than it truly was. My trust in him was not built on facts or proofs. It was built on the warm familiarity that grows from sharing breakfasts and long drives and birthdays and winter nights. That trust was so thick and so warm that I never imagined it could blind me. Yet that is exactly what it did. It wrapped itself around my eyes until I could no longer see the difference between what I knew and what I wanted to believe. When you love someone for decades, you create stories in your own mind about who they are. You fill in their silence with kindness. You fill in their gaps with innocence. You fill in their mysteries with faith. You tell yourself that the person you love is incapable of anything that might hurt you because your heart refuses to picture it. It is easier to protect a beautiful illusion than to face the possibility that the truth might not be so beautiful. I did this for years without even realizing. I built a whole world on trust that I never once tested. I let my love guide my understanding of him rather than letting understanding guide my love. People often say that love makes you strong, but they forget to mention that it can make you weak too. It can soften your judgment. It can quiet your instincts. It can hush the little voice in your mind that occasionally whispers, "Wait, something is not adding up." I had those whispers. I had moments when something felt slightly off, yet I convinced myself that a steady man with a gentle voice and loyal habits could not possibly be hiding anything from me. I turned away from doubt every time it rose. It felt disloyal to question him. It felt unkind to imagine anything other than honesty from a man who shared my bed and my life. So I pushed every question deep inside where it could not disturb the peace I valued so much. There were evenings when he came home looking tired in a way I could not quite name. Not sick, not stressed, just tired in a way that comes from carrying something heavy in the heart. I saw it, yet I softened it in my mind. I told myself he was simply worn out from work or weather or age. Love can turn a blind eye into a comfortable habit. I never once asked if something troubled him because I believed that love meant trusting him without checking for shadows. I did not want to dig. I did not want to discover anything that might force me to face a reality I was not ready to accept. Some nights he sat quietly at the edge of the bed as if collecting thoughts he never planned to share. I would place a hand on his back and he would smile just enough to reassure me, then lie beside me as though the quiet had never happened. Looking back, I can see that those were the moments when truth tried to surface. I can see that a more attentive heart would have asked harder questions. But I thought probing meant doubting, and doubting felt like betrayal. I confused trust with silence and faith with avoidance. I gave love all the power and kept none for myself. When you love someone deeply, your heart often becomes their greatest defender. It will fight against any idea that paints them in a painful light, even when that idea holds truth. My heart loved him so fiercely that it rejected every sign that might have guided me toward understanding. I saw his consistency and called it devotion. I saw his privacy and called it dignity. I saw his reserved nature and called it modest strength. I gave pleasant names to things that should have made me curious. I made excuses that kept me comfortable instead of searching for clarity that would have protected me. There were moments with friends when they would ask small innocent questions about our marriage. They wanted to know if he ever shared stories from his younger years or if he ever talked about family he no longer saw. I answered without hesitation. I said he was private, but that did not bother me. I said some people simply prefer to leave the past behind. I defended that privacy like it was a treasure when in truth it was a locked door that I never dared to open. Love had become a filter that caught all the warning signs and kept them from reaching my understanding. As time went on, I built a habit of interpreting everything through the gentlest lens possible. If he forgot something, I said it was because he was busy. If he looked distant, I said he was lost in thought. If he turned away during certain conversations, I said he was tired. I shaped my explanations around what would bring the least discomfort. I did not realize that love without clarity becomes a fog that thickens slowly until you can no longer find your way through it. I was walking through that fog with unworried steps because I trusted the man walking beside me. I assumed he could see the path even when I could not. Love is not only blind. It is often deaf too. It ignores the tone beneath a word and the hesitation behind a gesture. It silences questions before they find a voice. It lets you overlook small inconsistencies because the heart prefers warmth to truth. My heart clung to warmth. I told myself that a happy marriage is built on trust and trust is built on believing without interrogating. That was my weakness. I did not know then that trust without verification is not trust. It is wishful thinking dressed as devotion. There were years when his Tuesday trips should have made me pause. No matter how deeply you love someone, a weekly ritual untouched by any circumstance should inspire curiosity. Yet I never asked more than one or two lazy questions. He gave answers that were simple and calm, and that was enough for me. His kindness made everything believable. His dependable nature made every explanation feel reasonable. I believed him not because his words were convincing, but because my heart wanted to protect our life from any threat of discomfort. I did not see it at the time, but my love for him created a cage around my ability to think critically. It kept me from considering that the man I adored might have secrets. It kept me from imagining that a person can be both good and flawed at the same time. Love blinded me to complexity. I wanted him to be simple, honest, predictable, pure. I wanted that so much that I molded my world around the belief that it was already true. There were times when he held my hand a little too tightly, as if apologizing without speaking. I remember one moment in particular. We were sitting on the porch watching the sun sink behind the trees. He looked down at our intertwined hands with a stillness that ran deep. There was something heavy in his gaze, yet I chose to see it as tenderness. I chose the interpretation that felt safe. That is what love can do. It guides you toward the sweetest explanation even when the bitter one holds the truth. I made a habit of protecting my heart by ignoring possibilities that scared me. I thought love should prevent pain. I thought trust should erase doubt. I thought devotion should overcome reality. What I did not know then is that love does not prevent truth. Truth stands on its own. Love only controls how willing we are to see it. By the time he died, I had built 38 years of loyalty around a man whose heart I believed I understood completely. I did not realize how much of that understanding was woven from my own wishes rather than his real story. I stood beside him for decades thinking we shared everything. Yet in those quiet corners of his life, the ones I refused to examine, he carried pieces of himself that I never touched. Love had blinded me and I let it. Not because I was foolish but because I wanted to believe the best of him. I chose trust even when questions whispered at my door. I chose comfort even when curiosity tried to rise. I chose love even when love was shielding me from the truth rather than leading me toward it. And that is the lesson I learned. Love does not always guide us gently. Sometimes it shields us too well. Sometimes it makes us ignore the clues that would save us from heartbreak. Sometimes it holds our face between its hands and says, look only at what feels safe. Look only at what keeps the peace. Do not look at the shadows. I listened to that voice for far too long. Secrets may rest quietly for a time, but they do not sleep forever. They breathe in the dark spaces of a life, and they wait for the turning of a key or the shifting of a moment. My husband believed that locking his past away would silence it, yet truth has a pulse of its own. It beats even beneath steel and wood and habit. Looking back, I can see that everything hidden eventually demands to be found. A safe is only a pause, not an ending. A lie is only a bridge, not a destination. And a secret, no matter how deeply buried, begins to push upward as the years pass. It cannot remain forever in the shadows. The weight grows too heavy. The silence grows too loud. Time does not keep secrets. Time reveals them. When a person chooses to hide a part of their life, they convince themselves that concealment is protection. Protection for them, protection for the ones they love, protection for the world they fear might crumble if the truth steps out. My husband believed he was preserving peace, yet what he was truly preserving was fear. He tucked that fear away each Tuesday into that old safe, thinking he had found a way to control his shame. But shame is not clay that can be shaped or stored. Shame is fire. It smolders. It waits for air. And the moment that safe opened, it burst into flame and filled every corner of the room with the smell of something long ignored. Secrets create their own gravity. They pull at a person until the spirit bends under the strain. My husband carried that weight for decades. I saw the sag in his shoulders sometimes, though I misunderstood it. I thought it came from work or age or simple weariness. Yet the truth was heavier than all those things combined. A man who hides a part of his story becomes two men. The one the world sees and the one he knows himself to be. He lived between those two identities for almost 40 years, and that divide carved deeper lines in his face with each passing year. He thought he could hold both versions of himself together by hiding the fault line. What he did not understand is that hidden fractures still exist, and sooner or later the ground above them splits. Even the air in the house felt different once he was gone. There was a stillness that pressed against me, a sense that something had been left unfinished, a lingering echo of a truth that had not yet been spoken. I felt it every time I passed the safe in the corner. It sat there like a sealed confession, heavy, silent, patient. I did not want to open it at first. I thought doing so would disturb the memory of the man I believed him to be. Yet the presence of that safe pulled at me. It is strange how an object can hold so much unspoken weight. How metal and hinges and locks can vibrate with the presence of everything someone never dared to say. There were nights after his death when I found myself staring at that safe in the dim glow of a lamp. I felt as though a pair of hands I could not see were urging me to turn the key. Secrets do not vanish when a person dies. They shift their burden to the ones who remain. They push. They whisper. They demand light because darkness is no place for truth that has lived too long in hiding. I did not want to face what was inside. Yet deep down I knew the truth had already begun to unravel the moment he took his last breath. Death releases many things. It frees the soul. It frees the memories. It frees the stories that once clung tightly to the living. His stories were trying to reach me. They were pressing against the steel walls of that safe as though knocking from the inside. I remember the moment I finally turned the key. The click sounded like the first crack in a dam. It sent a shiver through me. That safe had been locked for years. It had sat unmoved and untouched while life went on around it. Yet when the door opened, the air that rushed out felt warm, as if the safe had been breathing all this time. And in a way it had. Secrets breathe. They expand. They settle. They wait. They waited for me. Inside I found evidence of a life I had never been invited to share. Letters that spoke truths he never spoke aloud. Faces and photographs that did not belong to my world. Words written in his handwriting that belonged to another time. At first I felt betrayed. Then I felt foolish. Then I felt sorrow so deep it hollowed me out. Every secret inside that safe had been living alongside me in silence. Every page carried a history he could not let go of and yet could not bring himself to reveal. He believed that burying the truth inside steel would keep it from touching me, yet the truth he refused to share touched me more deeply than any truth spoken freely ever could. Secrets breed distance. They create a separation so subtle that it can exist for years without recognition. I see now how that distance lived beneath our conversations. How it slipped into his pauses. How it shaped the quiet moments between us. I mistook that quiet for peace. I believed it was comfort. In reality it was the shadow of the truth he guarded so tightly. Secrets have a temperature. They cool the air around them. They make closeness feel slightly thin. I felt that thinness sometimes, yet I explained it away. I filled it with affection. I filled it with assumptions. I filled it with hope. But hope cannot dismantle what someone builds to hide their past. People think secrets stay locked because they are small. But the biggest secrets hide behind the smallest locks. A man can hide a lifetime in a single box. A heart can hide an entire history in a single lie of omission. And a safe can hold the silent scream of decades. My husband carried that scream quietly. When he died it echoed out. I had no choice but to hear it. Reading each letter was like watching a past life climb out of the shadows. It rose from the pages with a weight that settled on my chest. Every word he wrote was a reminder that truth finds a way to surface no matter how long it has been pressed down. I realized then that secrets are living things. They grow. They feed on time. They thicken with every year they are left unspoken. My husband had been feeding those secrets for 38 years. No wonder they burst forth so powerfully when I finally opened the door. The moment I realized the full truth, I felt something inside me shift. It was not rage. It was not disbelief. It was a strange clarity. I saw that he had been trapped by his own silence. I saw that he had built a prison inside himself and then lived in it. I saw that he had chosen secrecy not out of cruelty but out of fear. Fear of being judged. Fear of causing pain. Fear of losing the life he had built. But fear cannot protect love. Fear cannot sustain honesty. Fear cannot hold back truth. It only delays the inevitable. Secrets are patient. They wait until the world is quiet. They wait until the keeper of those secrets no longer has a voice loud enough to hide them. They wait until someone else must carry the weight. That is what happened to me. I became the inheritor of everything he avoided. I became the witness to a story he never found the courage to tell. And though the revelation shattered many illusions, it also freed something. It freed the truth from its cage. It freed me from blind trust. It freed him from a burden he had carried silently until his last breath. As I stood there holding those letters, I understood perhaps for the first time that nothing stays hidden forever. Not love, not regret, not mistakes, not memories. They all return in one form or another. Some return in conversations. Some return in dreams. Some return in the opening of a safe when the world has grown too still to ignore the truth any longer. The truth does not vanish when concealed. It grows stronger. It waits for light. It demands to be seen. And when the moment arrives, the truth steps forward no matter who is ready or unready to face it. That is what happened to me. That is how the past walked out of a safe and into my hands. And that is how I learned that secrets may sleep but they never die. They only wait for the day the door finally opens. Truth arrives the same way storms do. You can watch the sky darken for hours, or you can look up one day and find thunder sitting on your front porch waiting for you. It does not matter whether you are ready or not. Truth has its own timing, its own footsteps, its own voice, and when it finally speaks, nothing in your world remains untouched. I learned this on the day I opened that old safe and felt my entire life tilt beneath me. The truth did not knock softly. It burst into the room like it had been locked away too long and could no longer wait for permission. For years I believed that what you do not know cannot hurt you. I believed peace could be protected through silence. I believed some truths were simply not meant to be spoken. My husband lived by that belief, and I allowed myself to follow him even without knowing where he was leading me. I trusted the quiet. I trusted the pattern. I trusted the gentleness of his presence. I thought life was simple because he made it seem simple. But truth does not follow the rules we set for it. Truth is a fire that finds every crack. Truth is a tide that rises no matter how tightly you shut your doors. The morning the lawyer asked for the key to the safe, I felt a shift. Something subtle, something heavy. I held that key in my hand and felt the metal warm against my skin. It was strange to realize that I had held the key to my own unraveling for decades without knowing it. He carried that key on his chain every day. I saw it so often that it became invisible to me. But on that morning it felt like a weight handed from the past to the present. The kind of weight you know will change everything once you let it fall. When I walked into the room where the safe sat, I felt a stillness I had never noticed before. The air felt thick. The quiet felt expectant. It was as if the walls knew something I did not. I stood in front of the safe with the key pressed between my fingers, and I hesitated. Part of me wanted to turn away. Part of me wanted to protect the image of the man I had loved for so long. If I opened that door, I knew I could not go back to the soft world I had lived in. Truth once seen cannot be unseen. Once heard cannot be unheard. Once touched cannot be forgotten. Yet another part of me knew that truth cannot remain waiting forever. It will either be revealed by your hand or by someone else's. It will rise through the cracks of your life at the most unexpected moment. It will find you sitting at a dinner table, or waking from a dream, or standing in front of a safe with a key trembling in your grasp. The truth was already here, already pressing at the edges of my world. I had only to acknowledge it. When I finally turned the key, the sound it made was not loud, but it felt enormous. It felt like a boundary breaking. Like a dam giving way. Like the moment before a confession is spoken. The door opened slowly, and as it swung I held my breath. I do not know why I expected light to pour out or shadows to scatter. What I found instead was silence. Stillness. A quiet so deep it reached inside my bones. And then the reality of everything inside the safe began to take shape. It is strange how the truth can sit in front of you for years undisturbed, holding its breath while you walk right past it. All the secrets had been there while I dusted the top of the safe. While I set holiday decorations near it. While I told myself that my marriage held no shadows worth worrying about. All that time the truth waited patiently for the moment my hand would finally open the door. I reached inside and felt the papers beneath my fingers. They were cool and smooth and utterly ordinary. Nothing about them suggested the world-changing power they carried. Yet the moment I lifted the first letter from the stack, a tremor passed through me. My mind raced. My heart pounded. And suddenly the truth arrived, not as a whisper but as a tidal wave crashing into the quiet life I had known. People often imagine the arrival of truth as something clear and sharp. Something that immediately reveals itself. But truth often steps forward in stages. First there is the shock of discovery. Then the disbelief. Then the slow dawning as each piece of information connects to another. That is what happened to me. With every letter I unfolded I felt my past shifting. Events that once seemed simple took on new meaning. Moments that once felt peaceful seemed threaded with hidden tension. The edges of my memory began to rearrange themselves. Truth does not simply reveal what was hidden. It also rewrites the story you thought you knew. It forces you to see the past with new eyes. It takes you back to moments you never questioned and makes you wonder why you did not. Truth does not just show you what was concealed. It shows you everything your heart refused to notice. As I sat with those letters spread across my lap, I realized that truth had been trying to reach me for years in small subtle ways. In the pauses he never explained. In the hesitation that flickered through his eyes sometimes when I asked about the past. In the tension hidden in his smile when he returned from those Tuesday trips. I saw it all then. I saw how close the truth had been. How it had brushed gently against my life like a visitor waiting to be invited in. Yet I had turned away every time. I had chosen comfort over clarity without even knowing I was making a choice. Many people believe truth harms, but I think truth only hurts when it arrives too late. When it has been held behind closed doors until it bursts out with more force than it ever needed to carry. My husband hid the truth until he could no longer shape it. Until it could no longer be softened with explanation. When the truth finally arrived, it had hardened with time and grown jagged with silence. I think he knew that. I think he was afraid of what the truth would look like after so many years of hiding. Perhaps that is why he never opened the safe with me beside him. Perhaps he hoped I would never discover it. But truth does not fade with time. Nor does it lose strength. It waits. It watches. And when the moment is right, it steps forward whether you are prepared or not. The truth inside that safe had waited long enough. It was ready, and though I was not ready, I could not stop its arrival. When truth arrives unexpectedly, it shakes the foundations of everything you built. It makes you question your own memories. It makes you revisit every conversation. It makes you wonder what was real and what was shaped by silence. It creates a new map of the past, one that does not match the world you lived in. I felt swallowed by that mismatch. I felt as though every step I had taken had belonged to a different life. Yet truth also brings something else. Something painful but necessary. It brings clarity. And clarity is the first step toward healing. Even when truth wounds, it also cleans. Even when it destroys illusions, it creates space for honesty. Even when it breaks your heart, it frees your spirit. I did not understand that at first. The truth felt cruel. It felt sharp. It felt like betrayal. But as I read and reread each letter, I realized that the truth was not the enemy. The enemy was the silence that had wrapped itself around our marriage for decades. The truth inside that safe broke me open. But it also allowed me to grow. It forced me to see my husband as a whole man with flaws and fears and regrets. It forced me to face my own willingness to accept comfort over curiosity. It forced me to rebuild my understanding of the life we shared. And rebuilding, though painful, is not always destructive. Sometimes it allows you to stand stronger than before. The truth arrived when I least expected it. When the world had already taken him from me. When I believed nothing else could surprise me. When I thought I understood the man I had loved for nearly 4 decades. It arrived not through his voice but through his handwriting. Not through conversation but through confession. Not through confrontation but through revelation. I did not ask for this truth, yet it found me. That is the nature of truth. It walks its own path. And when the time comes, it stands before you without apology and without hesitation. All you can do is face it. All you can do is breathe. All you can do is let the new world quietly form around you. And that is what I did. I let the truth rewrite my understanding. I let it wash away the illusions I once clung to. I let it carve space for healing. The truth did not arrive gently. But it arrived exactly when it needed to. Discovery does not always feel like discovery. Sometimes it feels like sinking. Sometimes it feels like someone opened the floor beneath your feet and you are falling through memories you once trusted. That was how it felt when I realized the truth held inside that old safe. Grief was still fresh and heavy on my chest. I was still waking each day expecting to hear his keys jingle or hear him mutter that familiar early morning line. I will be back soon. Instead, I stood in a quiet room with dust floating through pale sunlight, trying to find strength to unlock a life I thought I already understood. The safe had always been a simple thing in my mind. A metal box. A keeper of marriage certificates and old receipts and maybe retirement papers. Nothing emotional, nothing strange, nothing that would ever shake the foundation of a lifetime. I expected family documents, maybe some old watch he never wore, maybe a few photographs he tucked away for sentimental reasons. But the weight of that safe felt different when I pulled it forward. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like it held breath. Like it held years. Like it held something alive and waiting. My hands trembled as I turned the dial. Each click sounded louder than it should have. As if the safe itself was speaking through the steel, telling me I was about to step into a part of him I had never met. The moment the door opened, I felt a stillness in the room. A feeling like time itself paused to witness what I was about to see. Inside the safe sat a thick stack of envelopes tied neatly with an aging ribbon. Beneath it rested a small wooden box with worn corners and faint scratches that looked like fingerprints etched by time. I touched the envelopes first. My fingertips brushed the ribbon and it felt delicate, as if it had been tied with intention and care. The envelopes were arranged in perfect order and each one had a date written on the front. Every date was a Tuesday. 38 years of Tuesdays. 38 years of secret letters. My breath left me in a slow, uncertain exhale. The world seemed to tilt. For a moment I thought the room grew smaller. I thought the air thinned. I thought maybe I should close the safe and walk away. But truth has a gravity all its own. You can feel it pulling you even when your heart begs you to stop. I reached for the first envelope and held it like a fragile relic. The paper felt soft and worn yet untouched. I opened it carefully. The first words did not belong to me. They were addressed to a name I did not recognize. A woman whose existence had never once brushed against my own. The letter was written in his familiar handwriting. A script I had watched for decades as he made grocery lists and jotted reminders near the phone. Only this script was different. Slower, more tender, more deliberate. Each sentence carried emotion I had not seen from him since our early years. Not unkind emotion, not cold emotion, just something unfamiliar, something private. I read the words and felt a strange mix of pain and awe. He spoke to her with a softness that did not diminish what he shared with me, yet it revealed a part of him I had never known. A chapter he never opened in our home. A part of his heart he had sealed away along with these letters. He wrote about memories that existed long before I ever entered his world. He wrote about choices and regrets and gratitude. He wrote as though he were talking to someone who shaped him. Someone who held meaning deep within the bones of his past. I read slowly, afraid each sentence might fracture something inside me. But I could not stop. The words felt like maps guiding me through corners of his soul. Corners I had never explored. As I turned to the next envelope, I began to feel a shift inside myself. The ache remained, but something else grew beside it. Curiosity, understanding, something close to compassion, not for the secret but for him. For the man who carried all of this alone for so long. Each letter told a little more. Not scandal, not betrayal in the way people expect betrayal to look. Instead, it revealed a powerful history. A story he had lived before he ever became my husband. A woman he had loved deeply, but circumstances had pulled them apart. Loss had carved itself into his heart in ways I never realized. She had passed long before he met me, and these letters were the only way he knew to keep her memory alive. He wrote to her every Tuesday. Sometimes only a few sentences. Sometimes pages. He wrote as though time did not erase their bond but simply transformed it. Reading his words felt like holding a candle in a dark cave. Each paragraph illuminated something new. Something gentle. Something sorrowful. I began to understand his stillness on certain nights. The way he sometimes stared at nothing with a faraway look. The way he avoided certain songs on the radio or paused when passing the old maple tree by the long road into town. These small moments were pieces of a life he kept tucked away, not because he wanted to deceive me but because he did not know how to share pain without reopening a wound he had spent decades trying to close. I placed the stack of letters down and opened the wooden box. Inside lay small keepsakes. A faded photograph of a young woman smiling at the camera with sunlight on her face. A dried flower pressed in a delicate paper frame. A ring that looked too small for my hand. A scrap of fabric from what looked like a dress. Each item felt like a breath from another lifetime. A reminder that he was a whole man before he ever became mine. A man who loved. A man who lost. A man who carried a grief so deep he did not know how to lay it down. As I touched each item, I felt something inside me soften. A strange kind of acceptance began to unfold. His secret did not diminish my marriage. It did not dilute the life we built or the love he gave me. Instead, it revealed his humanity in its rawest form. He had lived through heartbreak so profound it shaped the quiet rhythms of his life. It shaped those Tuesday trips. It shaped the way he held my hand during difficult moments. It shaped the way he rarely raised his voice. Sorrow had made him gentle. I sat on the floor with those letters spread around me like leaves from a tree that had lived through many seasons. Grief for him mingled with grief for the young man he once was. A man I would never meet. A man who loved fiercely. A man who lost more than I ever knew. And in that moment I realized something I had never considered. Sometimes love hides not to deceive but to survive. Sometimes people bury pain not to keep secrets but to keep breathing. As the sun began to set I gathered the letters and placed them back gently. I held the wooden box against my chest and felt its weight. Not heavy, not burdensome, just full of a truth I was finally ready to see. The safe was no longer a place of mystery. It had become a bridge between who he was and who I believed him to be. I finally understood the full shape of his heart. It held more than I knew. More love, more loss, more life. And somehow knowing the truth made me love him more, not less. It made me see that the man I shared my years with was not just mine. He was also the sum of every heartbreak, every choice, every Tuesday. And though he never spoke of this chapter, he honored it quietly with devotion that lasted decades. Love takes many forms, some spoken, some silent, some hidden in a safe waiting for the right moment to be found. Healing does not arrive all at once. It comes in small quiet waves that touch the edges of your life before you even realize your heart is changing. After opening that safe I spent days walking through the house like someone learning the shape of her own home again. Every corner carried some memory I shared with him, yet every shadow carried pieces of a story I had only just discovered. I felt both close to him and far from him at the same time. It was like holding two versions of him in my hands. The man I knew and the man I had just met through those letters. And slowly I realized that both versions were real and both belonged to me in different ways. In the first week after my discovery I could hardly sleep. I would sit in the living room with the lamp on and stare at the chair where he used to rest after long days. I would hear his voice in my mind speaking those little phrases that once felt ordinary yet now carried new meaning. Take your time, hun. No rush. Rest a bit. He always spoke as if he knew the weight of silence and the burden of memory. I used to think he was simply quiet by nature. Now I understood he had been carrying something deep. Something that shaped the softness in his tone. Something that shaped the patience he showed me even when life felt rough or unforgiving. One night as I sat alone I realized something important. The truth of those letters did not erase our life together. It widened it. It gave me a fuller picture of the man who shared my bed and held my hand through every storm. He had known grief. He had known love before me. He had known loss that carved itself into the deepest part of his spirit. And instead of letting that loss darken him, he turned it into gentleness, into gratitude, into loyalty, into the kind of steady love that made our home a place of peace. But acceptance does not come easily even when understanding grows. There were moments when I felt a sting in my chest, wondering why he never told me. Wondering why he never trusted me with this part of his life. I would stand at the kitchen sink with my hands in warm water and suddenly feel tears rise without permission. Grief for him. Grief for the woman he had lost. Grief for the years he spent carrying sorrow in silence. Yet with every tear something inside me softened a little more. Because I began to see that he had not hidden this from me to deceive. He had hidden it to protect us both from a pain he did not know how to reopen. Healing asked me to be honest with myself. So I sat down with the letters again. One by one, slowly, as if each one held a lesson. He wrote about moments when he felt lost. Times when he stood at the riverbank trying to understand why life takes people so quickly. Times when he questioned whether he would ever love again. Times when he felt guilty for building a new life after losing an old one so young. Then in the later letters he wrote about me. Not by name in the beginning. Just descriptions. A warm laugh from someone at the grocery store. A woman with kindness in her eyes. A stranger whose presence stayed with him longer than expected. Later he wrote about fear. Fear of falling in love again. Fear of breaking a promise to a memory. Fear of letting his heart open after years of guarding it. Those words changed something in me. They allowed me to see that I was not a replacement. I was a new chapter he never expected. I was healing in human form for a man who once believed he would never feel joy again. Understanding this reshaped every ache in my heart. It did not erase the pain, but it transformed it. I began to feel honored that he found love again after such loss. I began to feel grateful that he chose to build a life with me even while carrying memories of someone he had loved deeply. The next step in healing came the day I decided to visit the old maple tree near the long road into town. He used to pause there sometimes. I remember watching him from the window many years ago. He would pull his truck over, step out, and rest his hand on the trunk for a moment. I used to think he liked the shape of the tree. Now I understood that tree marked something sacred. Maybe a memory, maybe a turning point, maybe the place where he once said goodbye to a part of his heart. I walked there alone with the wooden box in my hands. The leaves rustled in a gentle breeze, soft, almost respectful, as if the world itself knew I was carrying something delicate. I stood beneath the branches and felt a calm presence settle over me. I spoke out loud even though no one was around. I thanked the woman who came before me. I thanked her for loving him in a way that shaped him into the man who later loved me. I thanked her for the part she played in the life that eventually became mine. And then I thanked him. For loving her, for loving me, for being strong enough to carry both truths. When I placed the wooden box at the base of the tree, I felt a release in my chest. Not closure, something gentler, a quiet acceptance. Healing grew deeper after that. I found myself recalling little moments of our marriage with new appreciation. The way he always squeezed my hand twice before letting go. The way he listened more than he spoke. The way he grew tender whenever I cried. The way he sat beside me during frightening storms and whispered that everything would be all right. All these gestures were shaped by the grief he had once lived through. He knew what it meant to lose someone. So he loved with careful devotion. With patience. With a kind of reverence I finally understood. As the weeks passed, I built a new relationship with his memory. One that included the whole of him. Not just the version I had known, but the version built from all his stories. Every letter, every keepsake, every quiet Tuesday morning formed a fuller portrait. And instead of feeling betrayed, I felt invited. Invited into the final chamber of his heart. The one he had kept locked, not out of secrecy but out of love for a woman who shaped him before life carried him into my arms. One evening I sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the hills. I closed my eyes and imagined him walking toward me. His easy stride, his gentle voice, his quiet smile. I imagined him sitting beside me and telling me the truth himself. Not with shame, not with fear, but with trust, with vulnerability, with the hope that I would understand. And in my heart I answered him. I do understand. I understand now in a way I never could have understood while he was alive. And that understanding made peace settle inside me like warm light. Healing is not a destination. It is a slow winding path. Some days I still feel a small ache when I think of the years he spent writing letters alone. Some days I wish he had shared that part of himself with me. But most days I feel gratitude. Gratitude that he lived fully enough to love twice. Gratitude that he trusted life again. Gratitude that he built a home with me that felt safe and warm. Gratitude that I was chosen by a man who knew both the weight of sorrow and the miracle of second chances. I now keep the letters in a new box lined with soft cloth. I visit them only when I feel called to. Not out of pain but out of respect. They remind me that love does not belong to only one moment or one person or one chapter. Love expands. Love evolves. Love holds remnants of the past while creating space for the future. Love leaves marks that do not fade when life shifts. And love grows even after loss tries to shrink the heart. Healing taught me this. You can love someone fully even when part of their heart lived before you. You can accept truths that once frightened you. You can understand love in deeper ways than you once believed possible. And you can find peace in stories that reveal the whole truth of the people you hold dear. In the end, my healing became a reflection of his life. Quiet, steady, strong, and filled with love that stretches far beyond the years we shared.